All hail Pep Guardiola, the true tactical master, for he has once again vanquished the threat of his young apprentice, Mikel Arteta's Arsenal, in a hugely important Premier League title race clash, which Man City won 4-1. How did he do it? How did he crush Arsenal's bones? What were the tactical things, the secrets he sprung to spring a surprise on his springy apprentice? So Arsenal lined up exactly how we thought they would, the 4-3-3, nothing too special, and it looked as though it was set up to take on Man City playing in this kind of 3-2-2-3 shape with a box midfield that City have been using in recent weeks. But that's not what Guardiola did, and it completely threw Arsenal's game plan off. And that change was going from this very lovely 3-2-2-3 into a 4-4-2, a very basic formation where Kanji goes to the left, Diaz comes across, Stone comes into the back four like this, Walker's a right back, you got Rodri and Gundogan in the middle of the pitch, then De Bruyne, who is the key here, playing just off of Erling Haaland, either on the left side or the right. He was given freedom to do that by his manager. He talked about it in the post-match interview. Then you've got Grealish and Bernardo Silva over here. So why did this quite basic change have such an enormous effect? Well, it allowed Man City to press Arsenal in a certain way and allowed them to bait Arsenal's press in another even more effective way, and making use particularly of Erling Haaland. Because the press was key here. So say Arsenal trying to build out from the back, they've got their two centre-backs split. We know that Zinchenko likes to move inside the pitch to be the pivot player, so he moves in here. And sometimes what Arsenal are doing, we're moving Partey out from this area into the wide areas to try and cover, give a bit of help in this section of the pitch here. So the key members of this press are going to be Erling Haaland, who was staying tight to Rob Holding a lot of the time in the first half, trying to match him up because he had him beaten. Then De Bruyne, who has space, would try and stay somewhere near Zinchenko. Then Bernardo Silva would come up here and stay in this position where he can go and press any number of different players at once if you need him to. He's amazing at that, so he's this sort of area here. And then along the pitch, Grealish would push up round about this area here with Gundogan and, crucially, Rodri, because he was part of the high press, which normally he isn't. So he was pushing up really high, staying close to either Xhaka and Zinchenko. So he's sort of dealing with Zinchenko if he moves, if he's blindsided De Bruyne, or if Xhaka moves, he goes with him and De Bruyne comes back to Zinchenko. So they have this kind of shape where it's like almost like this. It's like a weird kind of chess shape they've got going on, and it stops Arsenal being able to build up. They've got no way of playing out. So they play this way, then Ben White's there, the ball goes to Ben White, he can't get out, he's stuck in. Zinchenko might try and move to get a pass, but he's got too many people around him, so they can't make that pass. They can't get through, because Gundogan's got it blocked. And because Arsenal don't have an out ball, like a big tall player who can take the ball down, because you've got these big lads pushed up here, they just couldn't get the ball out from the back through here, so they just were stuck in this area, having to go backwards and forwards, always moving around, with Rodri stopping the ball into Xhaka and into Zinchenko or Partey, depending on where they were, because if Partey's here obviously, then Zinchenko's there. If they swap around, the same thing. Rodri was key to this high press, and that's what worked in the first half, stopping Arsenal. They were pinned back, couldn't do anything about it. But in possession was the real key, because Guardiola had quite clearly developed this set pattern of play to pass through Arsenal's press, but also a little secret tactic he's been using based off of something that Roberto De Zerbi's been doing at Brighton. We've got a video on this on our channel, Tifo IRL, you should check it out, it's very clever, about baiting the press. So Arsenal, when they're in their defensive shape, they're doing this sort of thing here, so there's no way to pass through them, there's no way. And Arsenal want to win the ball high up the pitch. So when the ball goes from the centre, well, the goalkeeper to the centre back, and then what they want to do is try and make sure the press shows the ball in these wide areas so they can snap onto them and try and win the ball wide. That's what they're trying to do in this game, and Guardiola knows that. And so Arsenal weren't really quite as aggressive in their press as normally they were, but Man City were trying to encourage them to do that because they want to bait them out of their defensive shape. If you're in a strong defensive shape, it's hard to play through you. But if you go and start making a press, you will naturally leave a man of Odegaard's here in Gundogan, and the ball goes over to this side here, and Saka's over here, and he goes to try and get to it. It frees up this pass through. And Man City want this to happen, even though it's high risk. That's what they want to happen. It's part of the baiting. So what Man City did to make sure they could play out of this was create these lovely passing angles out from the back. So Diaz might go to Akanji, who would then go into Gundogan, who would instantly play it backwards into Diaz. So you see they're maybe showing the ball here, Odegaard will go over here, but the ball will be played around Odegaard. He's hopeless in this press, can't really get used to it. That's one of the ones they were doing. On the other side, you've got Stones over here. So you've got Stones to Walker, who would then play the ball back inside to Rodri, who would then put it back instantly to Stones. That's another side. If Xhaka's pushing up here, or whether it's Martinelli pushing up, that's what they're doing, keeping Xhaka basically out of the game as part of this press. And so once City had baited Arsenal into falling for their trap and trying to press them high, and the ball goes back to John Stones over here, what he then does is target Haaland further up the pitch, because what we've got is De Bruyne is loose on his own, Partey's meant to look after him, but he gets away from him. So if you go long from John Stones into Erling Haaland, it's a 1v1 battle against Rob Holding. Guess who's winning that? Haaland will win that one, and then De Bruyne, all he's got to do is snake in behind him, like this. Ball goes long. Holland can knock it on, he's offside there, but obviously he was on when he got the ball. Then De Bruyne gets through and you get a goal. It's all about baiting Arsenal's press, playing to John Stones to get long into Holland, 4-4-2, Tony Pulis football, but boy, it works when you've got good players. And that's how they scored the first goal. That's exactly what happened for De Bruyne to open the scoring. And of course, Arsenal then had to change something because they're 1-0 down, and that meant that City could bait the press even more, because they can just wait on the ball, studs on the ball, and Arsenal have to go and win the ball back, but they know that when they do, they'll leave a gap for Man City to play through them. And so Arteta changed the way his team were pressing. Rather than pressing high and trying to force them wide, he just moved them into a 4-4-2, pretty much exactly the same as Man City, into this sort of shape and more of a mid-block. That's what they were doing. And so the defensive line was high from the start. He then also, because it's a lower line of engagement, he shifted both of these back slightly, so you get all these players going back into this line instead, and that meant they weren't engaging Man City as early, so they weren't falling into the trap, but they also weren't able to press them in the way they wanted, win the ball back. They couldn't play the way they wanted to play. Man City just dominated them in and out of possession in that first half, especially the first 20 minutes, because this change comes at about 19 minutes, and after that the game already feels like it's in Man City's hands. And then towards the end of the first half, with City dominating the play, Arsenal don't look too bad to be honest, but by the end of the half, a ball comes over from a free kick, John Stones gets his head on it, puts the ball in the goal, and it feels like the game is totally over. It also proves why VAR is actually a good thing, because without VAR, it wouldn't be a goal after all, would it? No. And so the second half, there's half time. Arteta has to make changes, and the changes he makes are a very subtle change to his backline. So we know Haaland was absolutely bodying Holding in this game. We know Gabriel is a more aggressive, more physical player than Rob Holding. So what they did was shove Gabriel over to where Haaland was, Holding over a bit more, with White pushed up a little bit more in defensive phases, and then Zinchenko's coming over as an extra defender in this phase with Martinelli a little bit deeper, maybe Xhaka dropping in. That's kind of what they did. The game was largely gone by then, and then we saw that City went further ahead, Arsenal got one back, and then Haaland finished off the whole thing by getting the goal that he deserved with his performance. But these subtle changes, De Bruyne playing as a free kind of number 10 off the back of Erling Haaland, the build-up play, Stones and Diaz staying slightly deeper, so there's always an out ball to be able to recycle play and encourage Arsenal to push up. All of these things were devised by Pep Guardiola to make Arsenal fall into his exact game strategy hand plans. His hand plans won the game, and that's how he crushed their bones!
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.